A flight crew's job is to ensure safety and service. But what happens when they swap service for scorn? On Meridian Air, Flight 351, a woman's simple complaint about a filthy seat and a distressed elderly couple is met with sarcastic remarks and, worst of all, laughter. The crew, led by a smug purser named Brenda, mock the black woman in 24B, dismissing her as just another problem passenger. They have no idea that the woman they are humiliating, Elara Vance, isn't just a passenger. She's the new CEO, and she's taking notes. This is the story of how their 5-second laugh cost them everything. The scent of stale coffee and anxiety hung heavy in Terminal 3 of Chicago O'Hare. It was 4:05 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the rain lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows matched the mood of the travelers inside. People were just damp and miserable. Elara Vance pulled the worn sleeve of her grey sweatshirt down over her wrist, checking her simple watch. Flight MA351 to San Francisco, boarding in 20 minutes, gate K12. She was invisible, and that's exactly how she'd planned it. No sharp designer suit, no clicking heels, no executive assistant clearing a path. Today she was just a passenger. She wore dark grey joggers, comfortable sneakers, a nondescript sweatshirt, and a pair of non-prescription glasses to complete the exhausted grad student look. Her hair was pulled back into a tight, functional bun. She was Elara Vance, passenger, not E.V. Vance, the newly and quietly appointed Chief Executive Officer of Meridian Air, the very airline she was about to fly. Her appointment, finalized 48 hours ago after a brutal 8-month selection process, wouldn't be announced to the press until Thursday. The board thought she'd spend Wednesday flying first class on the corporate jet to the SFO headquarters. Elara had other ideas. Meridian was bleeding. Not just money, though the Q3 losses were staggering, but reputation. It was a death by 1,000 cuts. Complaints about rude staff, filthy cabins, and a nickel-and-dime fee structure had hammered its stock price. The previous CEO, a man who hadn't flown commercial in a decade, insisted the customer sentiment data was being misinterpreted. Elara knew data was useless without context. The best data, the real data, was sitting right here in Gate K12, slumped in uncomfortable chairs and paying $5 for a bottle of water. Her ticket, booked under her unmarried name, Elara Hill, was for seat 24B. A middle seat, in coach. She'd already had her first taste of the Meridian experience. The gate agent, a man in his late 20s with a name tag that read Mark Jenkins, had been aggressively unhelpful. "Excuse me," Elara had asked politely. "I'm traveling with just a backpack. Is it possible to know how full the flight is? I was hoping to switch out of a middle seat if there's an aisle." Mark hadn't looked up from his phone, which he was holding below the counter. He just sighed, a gust of pure impatience. "Ma'am, we're in the final boarding process. The seat you selected is the seat you have. We can't just move people because they don't like the middle." "I didn't select it," Elara said calmly. "It was assigned at check-in. I'm just asking if there are any open—" "Ma'am!" He finally looked up, his eyes scanning her joggers and sweatshirt with a faint, dismissive sneer. "Everyone wants a different seat. If you wanted an aisle, you should have paid for it 24 hours ago, like everyone else." Elara felt a familiar, cold prickle. The assumption. The tone. "I see," she said, her voice flat. "So the flight is completely full?" "It's full," he snapped, as if she were a child. "Please step aside and let me do my job. We'll call boarding by zones." Elara stepped aside. She didn't argue. She didn't flash her ID. She just watched. For the next 10 minutes, she watched Mark Jenkins. She watched him wave a first-class passenger, white male in a Brioni suit, around the stanchions with a laugh and a "Right this way, Mr. Harrison, have a great flight." She watched him tell an anxious-looking family, who were clearly confused about the baggage policy, that they would have to pay $75 per bag, no exceptions, his voice carrying a note of triumph. And she watched him, 5 minutes later, let a pretty blonde woman in Zone 5 board with Zone 2, sharing a flirtatious smile. Inconsistency, Ilara noted mentally. Preferential treatment, hostility toward basic inquiries. She made a note of his name. Mark Jenkins. He was the front door to her company, and he was slamming it in people's faces. "We will now begin boarding Zone 4, the intercom crackled. Ilara stood, blending into the tired-looking crowd. She pulled her backpack onto her shoulder. The backpack contained a bottle of water, a protein bar, and a thick, legal-style notepad. A yellow notepad that was already filling up. Gate K12. Mark Jenkins. Customer service is not a priority. It's a punishment. She walked toward the jet bridge, a CEO disguised as a passenger, stepping into the belly of her own beast. She had no idea how much worse it was about to get. The air inside the aircraft was stale, thick with the smell of disinfectant and jet fuel. Ilara shuffled down the narrow aisle, bumped by people trying to cram oversized bags into the overhead bins. The flight attendants, clustered near the front, were in a tight-knit gossip circle, paying zero attention to the boarding process. Ilara finally reached row 24. A young man was already in the window seat, 24A, his noise-cancelling headphones securely on. The aisle seat, 24C, was still empty. And then she saw her seat, 24B. It was disgusting. A dark, sticky stain of what looked like dried soda coated the armrest and a portion of the seat cushion. Crumbs were ground into the fabric. But worst of all, stuffed into the seatback pocket in front of her, was a wadded-up, used tissue, stained with something dark, and a crumpled fast food bag that was emitting a faint, sour smell. Ilara recoiled. This wasn't just end of the day, messy. This was a biohazard. She looked around. The plane was in chaos. A few rows behind her, she heard a commotion. An elderly man, who looked to be in his late 80s, was standing in the aisle, looking confused. His wife, who was holding his arm, was speaking in a stressed, high-pitched voice to a flight attendant. "Please, you don't understand," the wife was saying. "He has dementia. I need to be next to him. Our seats are 26A and 31D. How can that be? We book together." The flight attendant, a young woman with Chloe on her name tag, looked overwhelmed. "Ma'am, the flight is full. We can't reseat the entire cabin. He'll have to go to his assigned seat. I'm sure he'll be fine." "He will not be fine," the woman's voice cracked. "He'll be terrified. I'm his wife. I'm his caretaker." Ilara watched. This was a moment of truth, a moment for compassion. The young flight attendant, Chloe Bishop, looked at her watch. "Ma'am, you are holding up the boarding process. Please take your seats." She then turned and bustled away toward the front, leaving the couple standing there, bewildered and panicked. Ilara's jaw tightened. She had two problems now, her own, and one that was far more important. She caught Chloe's eye as she passed. "Excuse me," Ilara said, her voice quiet but firm, impossible to ignore. Chloe stopped, her face a mask of annoyance. "Yes? This seat is unsanitary," Ilara said, gesturing to the filth. "It hasn't been cleaned. I can't sit here." Chloe glanced at the seat, her nose wrinkled. "I'll see if I can find a wipe." "A wipe isn't going to be enough," Ilara said, still calm. "But more importantly, that couple." She nodded toward the Hendersons as their luggage tags read. "They need to be seated together. The husband has dementia. His wife is his caretaker. You've separated them." Chloe's face hardened. This was no longer a simple issue. It was a problem, and she didn't want to deal with it. "Mum, as I told her, the flight is full. Everyone is in their assigned seat. It's policy. Policy." Ilara's voice dropped. "Policy should serve humanity, not the other way around. There must be something you can do. Ask for volunteers to move." "We're about to close the doors," Chloe snapped, her customer service veneer cracking completely. "Please just sit down. I'll get the purser." "Yes, please do," Ilara said, "and I will not be sitting in this." Chloe stalked off, her face red. Ilara stood in the aisle, a silent, unmovable object. Other passengers pushed past, grumbling. The man in 24A looked up from his phone, annoyed by the delay, before disappearing back into his music. Ilara turned to the elderly couple, who were still standing, looking lost. "What are your names?" she asked gently. "George and Mary Henderson," the woman whispered, tears in her eyes. "I just don't know what to do." "Hold on, Mary," Ilara said. "We're going to try to sort this." A new figure appeared. This one moved with an air of practiced, brittle authority. She was in her late 40s, her hair sprayed into a perfect, immobile helmet. Her name tag read, Brenda Holloway. She was the purser. "What?" she said, not as a question, but as an accusation. "Seems to be the problem here." Brenda Holloway, the lead flight attendant, was the queen of this metal tube, and her expression made it clear she would not tolerate a peasant uprising. Ilara, standing firm in the aisle, maintained a level, respectful tone. "There are two problems, ma'am," she began. Brenda's eyes narrowed at ma'am. "First," Ilara continued, "this seat, 24B, is filthy. It's covered in sticky fluid, and there is medical waste in the seat pocket. It's a health hazard." Brenda leaned over, her nose hovering an inch from the seat back. She didn't flinch. She just sighed, a long-suffering sound. "It's a used tissue, ma'am. Not medical waste. The cleaning crews do their best." "Their best wasn't good enough," Ilara stated simply. "And second, and more urgently, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson." She gestured to the elderly couple, who were now being jostled by the last of the passengers, "have been separated. He has dementia, and she is his sole caretaker. They cannot be in different sections of the plane. It's unsafe for him." Brenda's eyes, flat and unimpressed, swiveled to the Hendersons, then back to Ilara. She looked at Ilara's joggers. She looked at her plain face. She processed the information and came to a simple conclusion. Not important. "Ma'am," Brenda said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, "I have 50-plus flights a month. Everyone has a story. Everyone needs something. The flight is full. The manifest is closed. I cannot move people around just because you've decided to be a customer service advocate." The condescension was sharp enough to cut. "This isn't a story," Ilara countered, her own patience wearing thin. "It's a medical necessity and a basic tenet of compassion. Surely you can ask if there's a passenger in 31D willing to switch with Mrs. Henderson's seat in 26A? Brenda actually gave a short, sharp laugh. "Make an announcement and delay the entire flight. For this? No." She turned to Mrs. Henderson. "Ma'am, you will have to take your seat. Now, I'll have a flight attendant check on your husband." "I am his check," Mary Henderson cried out. "This is unacceptable," Ilara said, her voice losing its quietness, replaced by a cold authority. "Your job is to handle these situations. You have a distressed elderly passenger and a health hazard in this row. I need you to escalate this." "Escalate?" Brenda's painted-on smile was gone. "Escalate to who? I am the escalation. I am the purser on this flight." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "And let me tell you something. You, in your messy sweatshirt, don't get to tell me how to do my job." She looked Ilara up and down. "If you wanted a cleaner seat, perhaps you should have flown an airline that isn't for regular people, or better yet, flown private." It was a perfect echo of Mark Jenkins's sentiment at the gate, a deep, systemic rot. Ilara was stunned into a moment of silence, not by the insult, but by the sheer, unadulterated audacity, the complete lack of professionalism. Brenda, mistaking Ilara's silence for submission, smirked. "Now, I'll get you a trash bag for your waste," she said, nodding at the tissue, "and some sani wipes, and you will sit in your assigned seat. We are closing the door." Ilara didn't move. "I will not sit there, and you will not leave that couple separated." Brenda's face turned to thunder. "Right. That's it." She turned and stalked to the galley, just a few feet away. Ilara could see her clearly. Chloe Bishop, the junior attendant, was already there, as was a third attendant. Brenda didn't try to hide her actions. She gestured back toward Ilara with her head. "You will not believe the princess in 24B, Brenda said, her voice carrying clearly back to the row. "Complaining about a tissue. A tissue. And now she's trying to advocate for the old people. Thinks she's some kind of hero." The third flight attendant, a man, chuckled. "What's her problem? Dressed like she rolled out of a dorm room." "Exactly," Brenda said. She looked back at Ilara, who was staring directly at her. Brenda held her gaze, a look of pure, venomous contempt on her face. Then Brenda rolled her eyes, made a cuckoo gesture at her temple, and laughed. It wasn't a small laugh. It was a full, throaty, mocking laugh. Chloe Bishop, watching her boss, forced a nervous titter. The male attendant joined in. The crew was laughing at her. They were laughing at her complaint. They were laughing at her advocacy for the Hendersons. They were laughing at her clothes, her face, her very presence. The entire cabin was quiet now. Everyone was seated. Everyone was watching. They had all heard it. The humiliation was total, public, and complete. Ilara Vance felt a rush of heat climb her neck, so intense it was almost dizzying. It was a rage so cold and so pure it felt like ice in her veins. She calmly took her phone from her backpack. She opened her notes. She typed, "Purser, Brenda Holloway. Mocked passenger, 24B in front of cabin. Laughed at health complaint. Laughed at request for ADA accommodation for Hendersons." Brenda, seeing the phone, marched back, her face a mask of fury. "And now you're filming me. That's a federal offense. Put the phone away. Now." "I am taking notes," Ilara said, her voice dangerously quiet. She looked up, and for the first time, Brenda saw the person she was talking to. She saw the absolute lack of fear. She saw the icy intelligence. A tiny seed of doubt, for just a microsecond, flickered in Brenda's eyes. But her pride was too strong. "Last chance," Brenda hissed. "Sit down, or I will have you removed from this aircraft." "You do that," Ilara said. "Have me removed. I'd like to see you explain why. Tell the captain you're removing a passenger for requesting a clean seat and for advocating for an elderly couple. Tell him." Checkmate. Brenda was trapped. The entire cabin was watching. She couldn't risk the massive delay that deplaning a passenger would cause. She was furious. She grabbed a reserved tag from her pocket, slapped it on seat 24B, and grabbed Ilara by the arm, a light but definite tug. "Fine," she spat. "You'll sit in the aft jump seat. It's against regulations, but I'm doing it so we can go. You'll be uncomfortable. And you," she snapped at Mary Henderson, "just sit. Sit in 26A. We are leaving." Brenda stormed off to the cockpit, presumably to log the non-compliant passenger. Elara looked at Mrs. Henderson. "I'm sorry, Mary. I'm not done." She walked to the back of the plane, every eye on her, and strapped herself into the cramped, uncomfortable attendant's jump seat. The flight was 4 hours. This was going to be a long, long 4 hours. The jump seat was rock hard, located directly opposite the noisy, foul-smelling aft lavatory. It had no window, no recline, and no dignity. It was, Elara thought, the perfect place to observe. She was now, quite literally, behind enemy lines. She was in the crew's domain. For the first 30 minutes, as the plane climbed to cruising altitude, the crew ignored her. Brenda Holloway, Chloe Bishop, and the third attendant, Greg, worked the forward galley, preparing the first-class service. Elara could hear the clinking of real glass, the pop of a champagne cork, and the same laughter that had been directed at her. Only now, it was shared with the privileged few in the front cabin. Elara sat. She watched. She listened. After the fasten seatbelt sign was switched off, Chloe Bishop came to the back, her face still flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and anger. She studiously avoided Elara's gaze as she prepared the coach beverage cart. "Miss Bishop," Elara said. Chloe visibly flinched. She turned. "What?" "The Hendersons," Elara said quietly. "Row 26 and row 31. Please check on Mr. Henderson. His wife is worried." Chloe looked like she was about to argue, but something in Elara's unblinking stare made her reconsider. "Fine," she muttered. Elara watched as Chloe walked up the aisle. She saw her lean over Mr. Henderson in 31D. The man looked terrified, his hands gripping the armrests. Chloe said something, probably, "Do you want a drink?" And he shook his head violently. Chloe shrugged and moved on. She then went to Mary Henderson in 26A. Elara could see Mary trying to ask questions, her hands fluttering. Chloe just nodded, handed her a cup of water, and pushed the cart along. "Zero empathy," Elara wrote in her notepad. "Zero problem-solving. Fulfills minimum function. Fails human test." An hour into the flight, the beverage service was over. The real service began. Brenda, Chloe, and Greg convened in the aft galley, right in front of Elara. They clearly thought she was just some cowed passenger, plugged into her phone. They didn't lower their voices. "I've already filed the incident report on her," Brenda said, aggressively stirring a cup of coffee. "Non-compliant, disruptive. Tried to film the crew. I've flagged her. She'll be on the no-fly list by tomorrow." "Good," Greg said, unwrapping a first-class meal, a small steak that was clearly not meant for him. "God, the entitlement of these coach passengers. They pay $89 for a ticket and expect a private jet." "And the old people," Brenda griped. "Every single flight. Oh, I have dementia. Oh, I have a bad knee. Oh, I'm scared of flying." "You're in a metal tube at 30,000 feet, honey. We're all scared. Pop a pill and shut up." Chloe laughed, a bit too eagerly. "Mark at the gate. You know Jenkins at ORD. He called me when he saw her name on the manifest." Elara's head snapped up, though she kept her eyes on her notepad. "Wait, Jenkins called you?" Brenda asked, intrigued. "Yeah," Chloe said, proud to be in on the gossip. "He said she was a total Karen at the gate, demanding a new seat. He said, 'Got a live one for you on MA351. Seat 24B. Have fun.'" A cold, dark realization settled over Elara. This wasn't just incompetence. It was a network. They were collaborating. The gate agent had pre-poisoned the well. They had decided she was a problem before she ever set foot on the plane. Systemic, coordinated, hostile. Elara underlined the words. "Well, Mark's a good man," Brenda cackled. "I love him. He knows how to handle these people." "So she was pre-flagged?" "Totally," Chloe said. That makes it even funnier. Brenda slapped the counter, and she tried to pull the health hazard card. Oh, princess, I've seen things in seat pockets that would make your hair curl. A tissue? Give me a break. Ilara just kept writing. She documented the conversation. She noted the time. She noted Greg eating a passenger's meal. But the worst was yet to come. Brenda pulled out her personal cell phone. In plain view of Ilara, in the middle of the flight, she began texting. Then she opened her social media. "Oh my God," Brenda said, scrolling. "Look at this. Sarah Klein at SFO just posted. She's working our gate. She says the whole SFO management team is there for some unannounced executive arrival. David Chen is there. The COO, can you imagine?" Greg peeked over. "Ugh, executive arrivals are the worst. They walk through like they own the place." "Right," Brenda scoffed. "Probably some 60-year-old white guy in a suit who hasn't seen a real passenger in 20 years. I bet he's never had to clean up a health hazard in 24B. Chloe giggled. "Brenda, you're terrible." "I'm honest," Brenda said, tapping away at her phone. "Sarah's a friend. I'm texting her now. Just wait till you get a load of our flight. Had to put a psycho in the jump seat. God, I need a vacation." Ilara wrote down 2 more names. Sarah Klein, SFO, and David Chen, COO. She looked at her watch. 2 hours and 40 minutes left to SFO. 2 hours and 40 minutes of sitting on a rock-hard seat, listening to the crew that was the living embodiment of Meridian Air's rot. She wasn't angry anymore. She was surgical. She made a list. 1. Mark Jenkins, ORD, preemptive sabotage. 2. Brenda Holloway, purser, bullying, retaliation, in-flight cell use, theft of passenger meal by her subordinate, laughter. 3. Chloe Bishop, FA, complicity, laughter, failure to assist Henderson's. 4. Greg, FA, theft, complicity. 5. Sarah Klein, SFO, gossip network. 6. Cabin cleaning crew, ORD, gross negligence. And at the very top, she wrote a name, and she circled it. David Chen, COO. She needed to see if the rot stopped at the cabin, or if it went all the way to the top. The descent into San Francisco was smooth. The cabin was prepared for landing. Brenda, Chloe, and Greg strapped themselves into their jump seats in the forward galley, their work done. Ilara was left alone in the back. As the wheels hit the tarmac with a gentle bump, Ilara unbuckled. She was stiff. Her back ached. But her mind was crystal clear. The fasten seatbelt sign pinged off. The familiar rush of passengers standing up, grabbing bags and flooding the aisle began. Ilara stood, but did not move. She let every single passenger from coach deplane. She watched Mary Henderson struggle with her own bag, then move up the aisle to find her husband, who looked pale and bewildered. Mary caught Ilara's eye as she passed. She had a look of such profound defeat and sadness that it cut Ilara to the quick. "I'm so sorry, Mary," Ilara said, moving out of the jump seat. "It wasn't your fault, dear," Mary whispered. "You tried. People just aren't kind anymore." "Some people aren't," Ilara agreed. "But we're going to fix that." Mary gave her a strange look, then was pushed along by the crowd. Soon the plane was empty. It was just Ilara. She walked slowly up the aisle, past the filthy, reserved tagged seat 24B. She picked up her backpack from the overhead bin. At the front of the aircraft, Brenda, Chloe, and Greg were gathered by the door, saying their fake bye-byes to the last of the first-class passengers. When Brenda saw Ilara, her face hardened into a mask of pure loathing. "You!" she spat. "You need to follow me. We have to file your report, and I'm filing mine." "Of course," Ilara said, her voice neutral. She stepped out of the aircraft and into the jet bridge. And she stopped, Waiting at the end of the jet bridge, right at the boarding gate, was a small contingent of people in dark suits. They looked anxious. At their center was a man Elara recognized from her interview process. He was a sharp-looking man in his late 40s, with a perpetually stressed expression. David Chen, the chief operating officer. Standing next to him, holding a tablet, was a woman with an SFO, ground staff, badge. Her name tag read Sarah Klein. Her eyes were wide with panic. She was the one who had been texting Brenda. She had clearly just put two and two together. Brenda Holloway, stepping off the plane behind Elara, saw the suits. Her entire demeanor changed. She plastered on a brilliant professional smile. "Mr. Chen," Brenda said, gliding forward, pushing past Elara. "What a surprise. I'm Brenda Holloway, the purser from this flight. Is everything all right?" David Chen ignored her. His eyes were locked on Elara. He was pale. "Ms. Vance," David said, his voice strained. We were tracking your flight. We weren't expecting you on this flight. We had the corporate jet scheduled for tomorrow morning." Brenda Holloway froze. Her smile cracked. She turned, her head moving in a jerky, mechanical motion, to the woman in the grey sweatshirt and joggers. The princess. The psycho. "Ms. Vance?" Brenda whispered. Her eyes darted from Elara to David Chen and back. "As in E.V. Vance? The new—" Elara Vance looked at Brenda Holloway, the laughter from the galley, the mocking tone, the hissed, flown private insult. It all hung in the air between them. "Hello, David," Elara said, her voice projecting perfectly in the quiet gate area. "I decided I wanted the real Meridian experience. I'm so glad I did." She turned her head, just slightly, to lock eyes with the purser. "Hello, Brenda," Elara said. "It's a pleasure to be formally introduced. I'm Elara Vance, your new CEO, as of 8 a.m. yesterday." The blood drained from Brenda Holloway's face. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Chloe Bishop, who had just stepped off the plane to see what the holdup was, literally stumbled, catching herself on the cabin door. She looked at Elara, then at Brenda, and her entire body began to shake. "Sarah Klein?" Elara said, reading the name tag of the gate agent. Sarah, the texter, looked like she was about to be physically sick. Yes, Mum. Miss Vance?" "The one who's friends with Mark Jenkins at O'Hare," Elara said. It wasn't a question. Sarah Klein's legs gave out, and she had to grab a stanchion to hold herself up. "David," Elara said, turning back to her COO, her voice now sharp, cold, and unmistakably in charge. "I need an airport conference room, immediately." She then looked at the flight crew, who were frozen in a tableau of pure terror. "Miss Holloway, Miss Bishop, you will join us. Mr. Greg," she said, nodding to the male FA, "is not off the hook, but he will wait. You two," she pointed at Brenda and Chloe, "will bring your bags. You will not be flying back to O'Hare tonight." The SFO Airport Conference Room B was a soulless beige box with a formica table and stale air. It was the last place anyone wanted to be, which made it the perfect setting for a reckoning. Elara sat at the head of the table. David Chen, the COO, sat to her right, his face ashen. He had been given Elara's yellow notepad and was reading her notes. With every page he turned, he seemed to shrink. Brenda Holloway and Chloe Bishop sat opposite him, looking small and broken, their uniforms rumpled. Brenda's carefully constructed authority had crumbled, leaving behind a terrified, middle-aged woman. Chloe was openly weeping, fat, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. Elara let the silence stretch for a full minute. She let them sit in it. She let them stew in the consequences of their actions. Finally she spoke. "Ms. Holloway," Ilara began, her voice calm and devoid of all emotion. "You have been with Meridian Air for 22 years. Brenda's head snapped up. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Vance. 22 years. I've been loyal. You've been complacent," Ilara cut her off. "You've been a bully. And today, you were a liability." Ilara stood up and began to pace, her sneakers silent on the industrial carpet. "Let's review your performance on Flight MA351. Shall we?" She didn't wait for an answer. "First, you failed on compassion. You had an elderly couple, the Hendersons, one of whom is medically vulnerable. You had a duty of care. You not only refused to help, you treated their distress as an annoyance. You left a terrified man separated from his wife." "But the flight was full," Brenda protested, a last gasp of defiance. "I can't just move people." "You didn't ask," Ilara roared, and for the first time her voice was thunder. Brenda and Chloe both jumped. "You didn't make an announcement. You didn't ask the passenger in 31D if they would switch. You didn't try. Because you didn't care. You looked at them and you saw a problem, not people." "Second," Ilara continued, her voice returning to its icy calm, "you failed on safety. You allowed a biohazard. And yes, a used, stained tissue in a passenger cabin is a biohazard, to remain. You mocked my request to have it cleaned. You then illegally forced me to sit in an attendant jump seat, a clear violation of FAA regulations for a non-ticketed, non-crew passenger during a full flight." I was trying to get the flight out," Brenda whispered. "You were trying to win," Ilara corrected. "You were trying to punish the passenger who dared to question you, which brings me to service." She walked until she was standing directly behind Brenda's chair. "You were rude. You were condescending. You insulted my appearance. And then, you went to the galley. You raised your voice. You called me a princess and a psycho. And you, Ms. Holloway, and you, Ms. Bishop, laughed." Chloe let out a strangled sob. "You laughed in front of an entire cabin. You humiliated a customer. You made a mockery of the very concept of service. And you thought you were immune." Ilara walked back to the head of the table. "You were so arrogant, you didn't even stop there. You used your personal phone, during flight, to coordinate a gossip network with ground crew. You complained about me to Sarah Klein, who was coordinating with Mark Jenkins, who had already flagged me as a problem. This wasn't a mistake, Ms. Holloway. This was a pattern. This was a culture that you lead, a culture of us versus them, a culture where paying customers are the enemy, where the pores in coach are to be mocked and ridiculed, and where basic human decency is optional." Brenda was white as a sheet. "Ms. Vance, please. It was a mistake, a long day. I'm so sorry. It will never happen again." "You are absolutely right about that," Ilara said. "It will never happen again." Ilara Vance sat down at the head of the Formica table. The silence in the beige conference room was a heavy, suffocating blanket. It was broken only by the sound of Chloe Bishop's hitched, terrified breathing and the thwack of David Chen's hand as he placed Ilara's yellow legal pad on the table, as if it were a radioactive object. Brenda Holloway was staring at the nameplate in the center of the table. SFO Conference Room B. She seemed to be trying to memorize it, as if it were the last solid object in a world that was tilting off its axis. Ilara let the silence stretch for another 30 seconds, a conductor holding a painful, dramatic rest. She looked at each of them. David, the COO, pale and sweating, his authority stripped away. Chloe, a crumpled mess of tears and mascara. And Brenda, who was visibly trembling, her queen bee arrogance shattered, leaving only a brittle, terrified woman in its place. Finally, Elara folded her hands. She spoke, and her voice was not loud, but it filled every corner of the room. "Mr. Chen," she said, her eyes locking onto her chief operating officer. David flinched. Yes, Ms. Vance. You've read my notes." "I have," he said, his voice strained. It's appalling. I am so sorry. This is unacceptable." "Unacceptable," Elara repeated, tasting the word. "That's a very corporate word, David. I'd choose others. Systemic, negligent, endemic, rotten. This didn't happen in a vacuum. This happened on your watch. I assure you, I will get to the bottom of this immediately. You will listen," Elara interrupted, her voice cutting like a scalpel. "You are the chief operating officer. Your job is operations. And from the moment I stepped into O'Hare, your operation failed at every single human checkpoint. Your gate agent, Mark Jenkins, was openly hostile and practicing preferential treatment. Your cleaning crew was grossly negligent, leaving a health hazard on an active aircraft. Your senior flight crew, your purser, was insubordinate, cruel, retaliatory, and engaged in theft by proxy." She leaned forward. "Your operation, David, is sick, and the sickness starts at the head. You've been overseeing this. You've been reading the data, the customer sentiment, and you've been missing this." David Chen's face went from pale to ashen. "Miss Vance, I had no idea." "That is the problem. You are paid a 7-figure salary to know. Your job is on the line, David. I am giving you exactly 48 hours to present a comprehensive, top-to-bottom, no-holds-barred plan that convinces me you are the man to fix this, and not just the man who oversaw its decay. For now," she said, nodding to his pen, "you will take notes, and you will execute my directives without one single question. Am I clear?" "Yes, Ms. Vance, absolutely." "Crystal clear," he said, his hand shaking slightly as he poised his pen. Elara then turned her gaze. It fell on Brenda Holloway. "Ms. Holloway," Brenda's head snapped up, her eyes wide with a desperate, frantic energy. Yes, Ms. Vance, ma'am, yes. "You have been with Meridian Air for 22 years. A spark of hope, a lifeline." Brenda grabbed it. "Yes, that's right. 22 years. I've been loyal. I have perfect reviews. I've given my life to this airline. I know how it looked. But you have to understand." "No, Miss Holloway," Elara said, her voice dropping again. "You have to understand. I am not interested in your excuses. I am interested in your choices. Let's review them." Elara stood, her sneakers silent on the carpet, and began to pace slowly behind Brenda's chair. "You had a choice when you saw a passenger complaining about filth. You chose scorn. You had a choice when you were informed of a vulnerable, medically distressed elderly couple. You chose indifference. You had a choice when that passenger, me, insisted on a basic standard of human decency. You chose retaliation." "But the manifest was locked," Brenda cried, her voice cracking. "I was following procedure. I can't just move people. The flight was full. You were being disruptive. You were holding up the flight." Elara stopped pacing. She was now standing directly in Brenda's line of sight. "Disruptive?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "I asked for a clean seat. I advocated for a terrified old man. That is what you classify as disruptive?" "Let's talk about your procedures, shall we?" Elara continued, ticking points off on her fingers. "Is it procedure to mock a passenger's clothing? Is it procedure to form a gossip network with ground staff, like Mark Jenkins, to pre-target customers you've deemed problems? Is it procedure to go to a galley and, in front of your junior staff and other passengers, call a customer a psycho and a princess? Is it procedure to laugh?" Brenda's face crumpled. "You don't understand. The pressure. The passengers we get. They're all so entitled. They all want something for nothing. It was a long day. You didn't look important." It was the confession Elara had been waiting for. "Important," Elara repeated. She walked back to the head of the table and leaned her knuckles on it. Mrs. Henderson was important. Her terrified, dementia-stricken husband was important. Every single paying customer on that aircraft was important. The only person in that entire equation who acted like they weren't important was you, Miss Holloway. You acted like you were a queen on a private yacht. You forgot you are in the service industry. You weren't a leader. You were a bully. You weren't providing service. You were holding court. Your 22 years, Elara said, her voice like granite, have not been loyal service. They have been 22 years of hardening into a person who believes her small, delegated power gives her the right to humiliate people. You were so arrogant, you didn't even notice the woman you were mocking was taking notes. You were so complacent, you used your personal cell phone in flight to text your friends about it. You weren't just unprofessional. You were a fool. "Please," Brenda whispered, the tears now flowing freely, dissolving her perfect makeup. "Please, Miss Vance, my pension, my family. I have nothing else. It was one mistake, one bad flight." "Was it, Brenda?" Elara asked, her head tilted. "Was it just one? Or was it just the first one that got you caught? The way Mark Jenkins at the gate knew you by name, the way Sarah Klein was texting you, the way Chloe and Greg fell in line and laughed on command. That didn't look like a first time to me. That looked like a well-oiled machine of cruelty. You weren't just a bad employee, Brenda. You were the ringleader." Elara sat down. She looked at David Chen. "David, your first directive. Brenda Holloway's employment with Meridian Air is terminated. Effective immediately." "No!" Brenda shrieked, a raw, wounded sound. She stood up, knocking her chair over. "No, you can't. 22 years. My pension, my benefits. I have a mortgage. You can't just—" "I can. And I have," Elara said, her voice devoid of all emotion. "Your 22 years of service have earned you the standard severance package as required by law. HR will be in touch about your pension options, but your time with my company is over. You will be escorted from this airport by security. You are not to contact any current Meridian employee. You are, as of this second, a former employee terminated for gross misconduct, including passenger harassment, willful creation of a hostile environment, and multiple FAA regulatory violations." Brenda collapsed back into her chair, a broken, sobbing wreck. "Please, please." Elara looked at her one last time. "You laughed at a passenger's complaint. You laughed at an old man's dementia. You laughed at a health code violation. You laughed at me. Tell me, Brenda, are you laughing now?" Brenda Holloway simply dissolved, her face in her hands, her body shaking with the force of her sobs. Elara then turned her gaze to Chloe Bishop. Chloe sat bolt upright, her face a mask of pure, abject terror. She looked like a cornered animal. "Miss Bishop! Miss Vance! I... Chloe stammered, tears streaming. "I am so sorry. I know I laughed. I was scared of her. I was. Everyone is. I'm new. I just wanted to fit in. I know that's not an excuse. I know. I'm ashamed. I am so ashamed." "Shame is a start, Miss Bishop," Elara said, her voice a fraction softer, but still hard as steel. "But I have a question for you. Are you ashamed of what you did, or are you ashamed that you got caught?" "Of what I did," Chloe said, her voice desperate. "I swear, when I saw Mrs. Henderson's face, and I just gave her water and walked away. I'm a horrible person." "No," Ilara said. "You're not a horrible person. You're a weak one. And weakness, in this job, is just as dangerous as cruelty. It's the soil that cruelty grows in. You let Brenda's poison take root because you were afraid to be her next target. And in doing so, you became her. You chose to be cruel to fit in. You are not terminated." Chloe let out a gasp, a sharp, choked intake of air. "You are, however, no longer flight crew," Ilara continued. "Your wings are revoked, effective immediately." Chloe's face crumpled, but she nodded, accepting the blow. "You told me you were just following orders. Now, you'll learn to follow different ones. Tomorrow, at 6 a.m., you will report to O'Hare Ground Operations. Your new supervisor will be Maria Fuentes, the overnight shift lead for the cabin cleaning crew. Your pay is cut by 40%. You will be on final, indefinite probation." Ilara leaned in, and Chloe unconsciously leaned back. You laughed at a filthy seat. You wrinkled your nose at a passenger's request for basic sanitation. "For the next 6 months, Miss Bishop, you will be the one scrubbing those seats. You will clean every lavatory. You will empty every seat-back pocket. You will learn from your hands and your knees what service and dignity actually mean. It is not about the champagne service in first, Miss Bishop. It is about the used tissue in coach." After 6 months, if Maria Fuentes, who I will be briefing personally, gives you a perfect review, if you have not complained once, if you have shown true, unadulterated humility, you may be reassigned to the gate. You will learn to handle rebookings. You will learn to handle ADA and medical necessity requests. You will become the person Mary Henderson needed today. And you will do it with patience and a genuine smile, or you will be gone. Am I crystal clear? Chloe Bishop, weeping but her spine straighter, nodded. "Yes, Miss Vance, crystal clear. Thank you. I won't let you down." "Don't let yourself down again," Ilara said. "Now please wait outside." Chloe nearly ran from the room. A security guard, whom David Chen had silently summoned, entered and stood by Brenda. "Ma'am, please come with me." Brenda Holloway, the 22-year veteran, the queen of the cabin, was silently escorted out, not even looking up. It was just Ilara and David Chen. Ilara sat down, the exhaustion of the day hitting her for a moment. She took a sip of water. "Now, David, the cancer. Let's cut it out." David's pen was ready. "I'm listening. First, the Hendersons. This is your top priority. I want a team on this tonight. I want their hotel found before they check out. You will personally, call Mr. and Mrs. Henderson. You will apologize on behalf of this airline until your throat is raw. You will tell them their entire trip, from O'Hare to SFO and back, is being refunded to their credit card, effective immediately. You will tell them their return flight has been upgraded to our first-class international flatbed seats, and you will inform them that they are both receiving lifetime, top-tier platinum status. They will fly free with us, in first class, for the rest of their lives. I want Mary Henderson to go to sleep tonight, knowing her voice was heard. Second, the staff. Mark Jenkins at O'Hare and Sarah Klein here at SFO, fired, not tomorrow, tonight. I want their security badges revoked by midnight. Send their termination papers via secure courier. Reason? Gross misconduct and conspiracy to violate the customer code of conduct. I want a message sent so loudly it rocks both hubs. Third, Greg, the steak eater. Fired. And not just fired, we are prosecuting. I want you to pull the manifests for every flight he has worked in the last 12 months. Cross-reference the first-class meal counts. I want to know the exact dollar amount he has stolen from this company. We will make an example of him. Theft is theft. Fourth, the audit. This is your 48-hour project, David. You will fly to O'Hare tomorrow. You will begin a top-to-bottom, 360-degree review of all senior pursers and their immediate managers. I want to know who trained Brenda. I want to know who she trained. I want every single complaint file associated with her pulled from the database. I want to know why a bully was given perfect reviews. Someone in middle management is protecting these people, promoting a toxic culture. You will find them, and you will fire them. Fifth, the booking. Find the agent or the algorithm that separated the Hendersons. If it was an agent, they are on a 1-week mandatory retraining for ADA and medical necessity bookings. If it was our system, you have 72 hours to get our tech team to patch it, so that any party booked under a single confirmation cannot be separated if an age or medical flag is present on the booking. This never happens again. Ever. David finished writing, his hand cramping. Yes. Yes, Ms. Vance. It will all be done. Consider it done. Ilara stood. She picked up her backpack and slung it over one shoulder. She looked like the grad student again, but her eyes held the weight of a general. This is just the start, David. This is triage. She walked to the door, then paused, her hand on the handle. For years, this airline has been run on a failed premise, that the customer is a cost, a problem to be managed, that service is a burden, that we are doing them a favor by flying them. That ends tonight. We are rewriting the entire service manual. We are rebuilding this company on a single, non-negotiable principle. It's not, the customer is always right. They're not. But the customer is always human, and they will always be treated with dignity. Dignity, David. From the booking agent to the gate agent, from the cabin cleaner to the purser, from the CIO to the passenger in 24B. She turned back to him, her gaze absolute. Our new motto is simple. You will have it painted in every break room, in every galley, in every training manual. Dignity, in every seat, on every flight, no exceptions. And David? Yes, Miss Vance? Add one more line. And no laughter. She opened the door and walked out, leaving David Chen alone in the beige room. He stared at his notes, the silence of the room thundering in his ears. The revolution at Meridian Air had begun. That is the story of Flight 35P1. It's a story about how quickly power can be abused and how a little bit of laughter, when aimed at the wrong person, can echo into a lifetime of consequences. For Brenda Holloway, a 22-year career ended in a beige conference room. For Chloe Bishop, it was a hard lesson in humility, scrubbing cabins at 3 a.m. And for Ilara Vance, it was just her first day. She went on to rebuild Meridian Air, starting with the simple, revolutionary idea that everyone deserves dignity. The hard truth is this. We see these moments every day. People being dismissed, ignored, or mocked. The story of Ilara Vance is a reminder that you never, ever know who you're talking to. The person you dismiss today might be the person signing your paycheck or your pink slip tomorrow. Karma isn't magic, it's just a consequence, delivered. If this story resonated with you, and you believe in dignity and hard karma, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and be sure to subscribe for more true life stories where justice is finally served.